Company has to be at a base level doing everything with AI.
When we are looking at companies, we want companies to have a clear story on how they are playing into the AI wave.
Now there's a lot of talk about these AI factories. Everybody wants to build these $1 billion, $50 billion, and even in India, we're seeing that in Andhra Pradesh.
To me, in the long run, the value always goes to the application. To enable that, you need to build the infrastructure.
The biggest fear is, are they going into technology? Should they not go into technology? How do they steer their careers in this fast changing world?
That's a fear we all have, but it's not reality. No technology shift has resulted in long-term reduction of jobs.
Today, we're speaking with Venky Ganesan. Venky is a partner at Menlo Ventures, and he's focused on investments both in the enterprise and the consumer sector. Menlo is also an early investor in Anthropic, the makers of Claude. And as he describes himself, he is all in on AI. He has invested in well-known companies such as Redfin and Palo Alto networks. Not to date him, but I've known Venky for over 25 years when we were both in the Boston area. He has what we call a Midas touch. I caught up with Venky and we spoke about everything that's happening in Silicon Valley and AI. This is a front seat view, my friends. Hi, Venky. Welcome
Hi,
to
Sophie.
AI Basics. I'm so happy I'm seeing you after 25 years.
But you look the same, Suki. So genes have been good to you and the years have been good to you.
Same to you, I would say. But awesome. Let's
Thank
get
you.
started because attention spans are so short. We think about things for a minute and then move on. So we always start with this question. If there's one thing you want people to know about AI or about investing in AI, what would that one takeaway be?
I think the one takeaway would be that you're going to hear a lot of doom and gloom, but this is a real sign of progress. This is going to create prosperity and create advances that none of us have even imagined. We are going to cure diseases. We're going to go be a multi-planetary species. We're going to see incredible wealth and prosperity. So please do not buy into the doom and gloom. Think of this as a once in a lifetime opportunity because it truly is.
You sound just like Elon, by the way. He's also very bullish, especially the multi-planetary part. Wow, we're going to get into that. But before we do, this is the $1 million question, and I know everybody asks you it every probably single day. Because as you talk about the opportunity, people also are a little bit fearful that are we in a bubble? Is this a hype? Are these valuations really justified? I mean, you're looking at almost everything is just about AI, or every company is just talking about AI. So I mean, I was there during the internet bubble, but this feels even bigger. So what are you? I mean, you're right in the thick of it.
I think every time you have this incredible platform shift, right? And this is not new. You can go back to when we first had radio or TV or cars, or even earlier than that when you had canals in England. You have this incredible explosion of capital because people see the opportunity, and that will result in some companies being overvalued. But the thing is, you got to step away from the day-to-day noise and think about the long-term trends. And the long-term trends is that AI is going to be the most transformative platform shift of our lifetime. And it's going to change every aspect of our life from how we live, work, and play. And that's going to be very meaningful. And there's going to be incredible opportunities and wealth created. In the short term, there will definitely be some companies that are overfunded and some excesses. And that's just the nature. People forget at one point in America, there were over 1,000 car companies. There are 3 car companies today. People forget how many radio companies we've had. And that's the nature of how capitalism works. And in some ways, you need that. You need people to overfund it. So I would say for the average person, don't worry about that. What you should do is focus on how can I learn and get up to speed on using AI in my life. That's what I would focus on.
Now, you've said this and you've said this very boldly. I'm all in on AI. I mean, we know the book, but what does that mean when you are practically looking at it? Is it that the company has to be at a base level doing everything with AI, or they're just because everybody says they're all in on AI these days?
That's true. I like to think that we said it early because we in 2021. So just to recap, Menlo Ventures is a 50-year-old firm. We have been doing early stage venture capital. We're one of the oldest, most prominent firms in Silicon Valley. And we decided to put our shift and focus on AI because we think focus is really important. We also think this is the most important technology shift of our lifetime. You and I were, I would almost say growing up when the internet was the biggest
Yes.
platform shift. And I think this is bigger than the internet. And so when we say we are all in on AI, we mean multiple dimensions. One, we're looking for core AI technologies that could be a foundational model like Anthropic, where we are a large investor. It could be like core technologies like a Pinecone or a Neon, which are like vector databases and Postgres databases that make these AI uh, applications work. It could be AI application companies. What I mean by AI application companies is we have a company called Eve in the legal space or Ilios in the healthcare space. And we believe that long term, most of the value will be created in the application space. That's where the startups are coming in. And so when we are looking at companies, we want companies to have a clear story on how they are playing into the AI wave. Either they were AI native companies or they're companies that are evolving to play into the AI world. That's what we're looking for.
Now tell me this, because you took the biggest name, you took the name Anthropic, and everybody looks at it. You've just had Microsoft, you've got NVIDIA, everybody is looking at it and saying now coding is possibly the hottest thing. But how did you look at that and say, you know what, this is where the value will be created? How do you look at this? Because even then, it seemed like such an insane valuation at that point.
It's true. Now, look, we invested almost 2.5 years ago at a $4 billion valuation, right? And then so that was when the company had no product and no revenue. And at that point, what was obvious to us was that the founders of Anthropic, which are eight amazing people, who are actually the people who created ChatGPT. So people don't fully appreciate it. They created ChatGPT at OpenAI, and they realized that ChatGPT was evolving in a way they were not comfortable with, and they decided to start a new company focused on safety. One of the core fundamental tenets of Anthropic is how to build a highly safe foundational model. And that was very important to them. When you met them, you could see that these were very special people. They had a clear vision of what they were trying to build, highly principled around what they wanted to do. And in my experience, those kind of people are very rare. And when you find them, you go all in.
My God,
And
but
that's what
all I'm focusing in on is that 1 billion, 350 billion today. Wow. What an amazing,
it's
amazing story.
it truly is, and all credit to them. They were the ones who built it. We are just grateful to be part of that journey.
But now let's talk about Anthropic specifically, because there's a lot of concern because they are also a foundational model, but they're also in the corporate space. I mean, when you see them, are they really so focused, or are they going to choose one of the two paths?
I think they've been very focused on being a high quality AI enterprise, right? I mean, they have a consumer product. I use it all the time, Claude.
Me too. I
But
used Claude for all these questions. I said, I am not going to use ChatGPT, at least
and
not for you.
thank you. So Claude's a great consumer product. It's also a great enterprise product. So I don't think there is necessarily a dichotomy. What I would say is like Anthropic is trying to be focused. They're not trying to do everything to everyone. So they didn't put out a video model or a audio model. They're trying to be very focused on building the best model. Turns out their model is incredible for coding. And coding is such a great market that they're making sure that their model continues to be really good. And even now, after Gemini 3, which has been a very successful launch for Google, still the Anthropic models are still the best for coding. So what I would say is that they have a high degree of focus and clarity, and they are a no drama company, which is the best part of working with
I
them.
love that, the no drama part, because there's a lot of drama, by the way, in AI, which I'm surprised. It seems like a soap opera half the time because the founders are fighting, or at least publicly, they're talking about it. But let's talk about another thing about China, because I think that's the big question. Because you've got US, you've got China, and of course we want to talk about India also.
Mhm.
Because when we look at it, we look at the world as kind of being either US, you've got these brilliant model coming, you've got China, you've got the open source coming, and of course India is trying to also say, where is my space in all of this, or is there space now for anybody else?
It's interesting because I do think that the capital cost of starting a AI company, or at least a AI foundational company, is very, very high. So you have three elements you have to think through. Can you get the human capital? That's one. There's a limited number of people in the world who can build these things. Second, even if you can get them, can you raise the capital? If you look at some of the more recent foundational model companies, whether that's Mira Muradi at Thinking Machines or Ilya at SSI, they are raising billions of dollars, like 5 to 10 billion. So that's a high barrier. I think what China has opted to do is really focus on the open source. Like I would argue, like some of the best open source models right now are from China, models like Quen. And then I think their approach is let's go open source and let's use open source as a way. I think India needs to figure out which path they are in. There might be one path you say, I'm not actually going to build a model. Or there might be a path that says, I need to build a model so that I can have my own sovereign interest. Because one of the realities is if countries are dependent on models from the US, they are going to be, in essence, dependent on the US government, right? And so if you want to have independence as a nation, you might need your own model. But again, very few people are going to have the human or the financial capital to build one of those. And I think that's one of the decisions India needs to take is, do I embrace an open source model because anybody can do that and build it and own it and control it? Do I partner with one of the closed source models like OpenAI and Anthropic and have them build an India version that they can control? And those are all the decisions that I think people need to make, and I am hoping they're making.
Well, yeah, I think they're thinking about it, but I think it happens so quickly. I think this AI race, I mean, in the last 2.5 years. So it's really taking a lot of countries' time to even just get their head around what to do, how to do it. Of course, there's a lot of investment in India that's going in trying to think about foundational models and whether we need an India specific one, but we haven't still seen the results yet. So early days. But let's
Yeah,
talk about this.
and
Also, go ahead.
I was just going to say something. I think there's also another dimension. Like, look, all of these models are built on English and on English data and English text. So there are going to be opportunities for someone to build a model specific to an Indian language, specific to the Indian context, specific to Indian data sources. And I think that's the opportunity that exists, where someone's going to build something very specific that's going to be tuned to um, Indian culture and Indian psyche. Because India is a big enough country, it has, over a billion people. And if someone can build something specific to them, I think you will end up having meaningful uptake. Now, one thing I'll say is that traditionally in India, the Facebook of India has always been Facebook, the Twitter of India has always been Twitter. So India has actually embraced, because I think what happens is that the top 2 to 3% of India's population tends to be very comfortable with Western products and embraces it at a much higher level. Because the Google of China is not Google, it's Baidu, but the Google of India is Google,
Google, yeah.
and so traditionally Indians have opted to embrace the dominant product as opposed to look for a local Indian product.
But now, what about the value? Because now we see that, okay, there was a lot of talk about models, but now there's a lot of talk about these AI factories. Everybody wants to build these $1 billion, $50 billion. And even in India, we're seeing that in Andhra Pradesh, there are two huge, massive investment and infrastructure projects coming up. Is the value shifting now more from models to applications or to the infrastructure layer? Or are we seeing action all across the spectrum?
I think you're going to see action all across the spectrum. Ultimately, in every big, the value does go to the applications layer over time. In the beginning, you got to build the infrastructure. So if you go back and think about um, the time we grew up, which was in the 90s, there's this focus of how to get broadband to everybody. So everybody was focused on how do we put fiber on the ground, how do we build the telecom infrastructure. If you remember, there was a time when broadband was very expensive and you'd pay for a 14.4 modem, then you went to a 28.8 modem. Now I can get, a high-speed internet broadband in America for $40. I think in India, Geo has come in and dramatically changed. So what happens is that I think in the beginning, but you lay down this infrastructure so that you can do stuff, right? You put tracks on the ground, not to put tracks on the ground, but because you want the train to go to places. And then when people start going to these places, then economic activity happens. So to me, in the long run, the value always goes to the application arena. To enable that, you need to build the infrastructure. And what I think people are doing with this infrastructure is they're creating the ability for you to use AI because AI requires power, like it requires compute. And so the amount of housing you're going to need is so significant that if you don't invest in it, you'll not be able to. It's the equivalent of going from a 14.4 mode to all you can have high-speed internet.
No, it's crazy because these numbers, every day you hear a bigger figure in terms of how much people are investing in infrastructure. So I think we're even seeing that these data centers are becoming huge. But now, when you see all of this, because you're seeing that so much investment is happening, but when are the exits going to start to happen? I think that is really now the question. I mean, is the revenue scale up going to match it? And are we going to see this? Because with these type of valuations, you're looking at listings that have to be $1 trillion plus.
Yeah, and I think they will happen, and they will happen in the normal course. I think eventually in the next few years, I suspect you're going to see some of these companies go public. You're going to see a lot of M&A activity. So I am not worried, right? And I realize that, it's sexy to talk about these things. Is there a bubble? It's not a bubble. The reality is for the average person, you should look at this as a positive. People are putting a lot of money to build this technology to happen. Whether they make money or lose money, it doesn't matter to you. What matters to you is can you get up to speed and figure out how to leverage this. So to me, the most important thing I would spend time is how do we leverage the technology? Like go play with these models, learn how to use it, learn how to solve problems for yourself, and even better, if you solve problems for others using the technology, you can make money. This is going to create an explosion of wealth creation opportunities for people. And Indians are very entrepreneurial, and they should think about how to leverage these models to create businesses.
Now tell me, you've got three daughters, I think, and three daughters. So this becomes very personal because I've got two. And my biggest question is, what do you tell them? How do they? Because the biggest fear is, are they going into technology? Should they not go into technology? If they're going into technology, how do they steer their careers in this fast changing world?
Yeah, so this unfortunately this notion that human beings are going to become irrelevant or that we are going to be replaced. Like I realize that that's a fear we all have, but it's not reality. No technology shift has resulted in long-term reduction of jobs. I always remind people, you go to 1900 and you think about the percentage of Americans who were focused on agriculture, it was over 90%. So 90% of Americans are focused on agriculture. You think about where we are in 2025, less than 3% of Americans are focused on agriculture, but our output is almost 10x. So we are getting 10x more output, even though the number of people have gone reduced by 30x. And what happens? All the other people, the people who are no longer focused on agriculture, they are doing other jobs. This always happens, but it's very hard to know what these other jobs are. If you went in 1900 to someone and said, "Hey, what are going to be the other jobs?" Nobody would know. Same thing happened, if you remember in the 70s, uh, we started having ATM machines, and people said, "Oh, if you have ATM machines, there's going to be no jobs in banks anymore." There are now more cashiers and more people working in banks than there were when ATM machines came in. Why? Because the role evolves. People do different things. And that's the same thing. So I know people are, oh my God, the world is going to completely change it. The world is going to change, but the core things about what makes human change. So I always tell the things that be curious, learn, be good about working with people, be empathetic and kind. The ability to build real human relations go away.
That's awesome. Now let's end with a quick rapid fire. I'm just going to shoot this out and the first things that come to you. So, what do you think is currently the most overvalued
Okay.
trend in AI right now?
Most overvalued trend right now is putting a lot of infrastructure. So infrastructure spend,
What is the most undervalued opportunity?
applications,
One AI company you wish you had invested in.
cursor.
When is AI's iPhone moment going to happen that everybody will be using AI?
It has already happened.
The biggest misconception about AI investing.
That it's a winner take all.
If you weren't a VC and now you are a tech person, what would you be doing in AI right now?
I would be learning and playing with every model out there and spending my time on YouTube because I got to tell you, there's more information today on YouTube than anywhere else, and you can learn everything on YouTube.
I love that because it's my go-to source too. Now you've led me to my next question. One resource then you would point everybody to and say, yeah, please go and listen to this, or this is a podcast that I listen to all the time.
Favorite part of AI are listening to Dwarkesh, who is
Yeah,
Dwarkesh Patel.
I
He has a
listen to him too.
podcast.
Yeah.
And then uh, I like to listen to the B2G podcast that Gurley and Brad Gerstner do because I think I'm interested in the financial aspects of AI. So those are two things I listen to.
And I hope you'll add us to your list too. But thank you so much,
Uh,
Wendy.
now that I have your podcast, that's the third thing on my list.
But thank you so much. And this was great speaking
It's
to
a
you and
real
great
pleasure,
catching up
and
with you.
thank you so much, Suki. Wonderful to see you. Let's do this again.
And let me know when you're coming to India.
I'm for sure.
Bye.
Bye.